Hi everyone, Tim the Plane Man here, back again with plane time to continue the build of this glorious Dancing Wings Hobby Sopwith Pup Micro. As you can see, very small. So we're ready, we're at an exciting point now with the build of this plane. It's time to make it move. It's hopefully time to make it soar. This is when we put in the electronics. So I would have loved to have been doing the electronics earlier. Although the plane looks gorgeous and it's going to be doable to put the electronics in now, it would have been much easier in terms of just building the plane and getting everything together to do the electronics earlier in the build. I will be including a card and maybe even a short video to explain what I think after having built it, what the build order should be, and when the electronics should have gone in. In my defense, I didn't just blindly follow the instructions, although the instructions do say to put the electronics in at the end. I also didn't have the pieces I needed when that time came, when I could have said, okay, now let's put in the electronics. In particular, I ordered the wrong receiver. So the receiver, you know, I got this plane with a motor and with servos as a package off Amazon, packaged up by a company called Vloga, but it's the Dancing Wings hobby model, and they packaged it up with a motor and an ESC and a set of servos that are you know, two 1.7 gram servos, and everything, you know, should come together, but it needed a receiver. So I went off and ordered the receiver, ordered the wrong one, and kept building the plane because it did say you can put the electronics at the end. So now I'm at this point when I'm following the instructions, and I'm going to be able to comment on how tricky it is, because it is going to be a little tricky to get the electronics in after the planes come together like this. And as you can see, I've taken the cowling off. It pops off with a nice little magnetic attachment that we built earlier on in this video series, but it clips right back on again when you need it. So we'll be building in a whole set of electronics with a receiver, and I've decided not to use the ESC that came with the build. I'm going to be using a RX144E receiver that has a built-in ESC, and so we should be able to just wire the motor up directly to the receiver, and then connect the two servos that did come with the model, very nice little 1.7 gram servos, and connect it all together and get it to work, and then slot the power base into the front of the model using those screws that I explained to you about earlier, and then basically connect up and there's two holes in the back end of the plane where the elevator and the rudder will be controlled by the push rods from the servos that'll mount in the bottom here. So it's going to be a little fiddly, but it's doable. I think it should work. We'll see how we go. Obviously, I'll let you know any problems, any recommendations or suggestions. But if you are seeing this and you haven't got that far yet, when assembling the fuselage, and even before putting on the top and the bottom, and definitely the bottom of the fuselage, I'd be saying you want to be putting in your electronics at that point if you have everything ready to go. So I'll put the plane away for now, because the next step is actually going to be getting out the electronics and doing some soldering, making sure everything works, and then we'll bring the plane back and insert everything. So come along for the ride, should be fun. So here we have all the pieces. Nothing is fixed. I'm just doing a dry fit to figure everything out. And here's our little power mounting base that we built earlier and removed from the plane. And yes, as you can see, I've just placed the receiver on here just to figure it out. Now, one of the things I figured out just as part of working out where this is going to go, I thought first about mounting the receiver sort of lengthways like that. If I do that, then the receiver actually will interfere with the two screw holes that will hold the mounting base in place. Alternatively, I mean, it's possible that I'd be able to screw these screws in there, but what would happen is that those two screws run the risk of hitting against some electronics on the bottom of here and potentially causing some damage. I don't want to do that. Also, looking at the plans here, they've used quite a small receiver. I think it might be one of the RX144s, a bit like this one, and the model, the instructions show mounting it sideways. So, and I've checked it will fit. So I'm going to mount this sideways on here like this, and then what we'll do is we'll bend that antenna out of the way and run it across here. The other thing that I've done, following on from the challenging exercise of finding the manual for this little receiver that we've got here, tiny little thing, as you can see if I hold it in my hand, and this is the Aero Electronics Operations. This is the card and it basically just came in a plastic bag like this. And there's a QR code on here for finding the manual, which is not very well printed and kind of difficult to read, but I did manage to get it. And what I did is downloaded that manual as a PDF onto my computer. I will say that I'll try to put the link into the video if I can, so hopefully you can have a little, if you're going to use the same receiver, you can find it. The receiver manual includes so-called manual, it's 2 pages, includes all the information for the various RX144 series, including the E with the built-in brushless ESC, and the other ones where it doesn't include that, which is I think potentially what they may have used in the pictures in the instructions. So what we're going to do is we're going to mount that this way, sideways. The servos, again, dry mounted. I haven't actually put them in place permanently yet, just to see how they'll go, but they fit quite nicely, pretty much perfectly into those little holes there. This is the way round they need to go. The servos come with a single arm, which is nice. I don't have to break any kind of the 4-wing options. They come with a 2 and a 4 and a 1-arm servo arm, so that's control horn on the servo, so that's perfect for us. And these JST SH 1.0 millimeter pin connectors are so important. It means that these servos will actually work, and without any soldering they will connect and plug into the plugs on the side of the controller here. And the other thing about that is that just following the instructions, obviously it's it's quite important, not just maybe, it's very, very important to get the correct servo connected to the correct plug. So I've labeled them. So following the instructions in the manual, if you hold the controller up with the antenna pointing upwards, then the rudder is on the left and the elevator is on the right. And these two would be used, for example, for ailerons if we had, but we don't have for these, so that we won't be using those other 2 channels. And what will need to happen is that the little connector plug. So basically I've labeled those, and before I talk about the motor, I just want to point out that the next thing that we need to do is figure out which one of these, therefore, is going to be elevator or rudder. And the interesting thing about this, I lined it up on the model and figured out that if I run the carbon fiber rod through the side of the plane here and run it through to the front, it's basically going to come out on the other side. So they're going to cross. And it's a little tricky to be 100% sure whether there's another alternative, because now I've closed it all up and I didn't do that up front, and that's kind of why it might have been helpful if I had a thought ahead and maybe built that in earlier, but I didn't really have a choice. So what we're actually going to have here, if you notice, the elevator control horn, the rudder control horn is here on the right, and the elevator control horn is here on the left. Just make sure you can see that. So rudder over here on the right, elevator on the left. The rods are actually going to go through and cross inside the plane and then come out, so that the rudder on the right is going to be on the left. So this one, when we actually attach them and get them to work, and the elevator is going to be on the right. And so that means that we just need to make sure that this rudder gets plugged into the R, which will be that one there, and the elevator gets plugged into the E, which is that one there. And you know, a little bit of planning ahead required. I mean, of course, that can be switched out later. One of the, I guess, the nice things about this is that, I mean, technically this is removable, but the other thing is about the control horns, the control rods, is we're actually going to have to put this together and put the control rods, feed the control rods through from the back of the plane, and then attach the control rods using the heat shrink tubing, and you'll see how we do that later, and then slide that in, and then attach the control rods at the other end over here. And really, although this is technically removable, it's really not removable once you've attached it to the control rods and the elevator horns without basically breaking something. So it's, you know, it's not something you plan on doing all the time, sliding that out. For example, planning on, you know, thinking I've got this right, and then thinking, oh well, you know, I can unplug those two plugs and switch them over if I get it wrong later on. Not really an option. And the same thing with the motor. So we do have to get this right before we basically slot everything in place and be sure. So we're going to test on the way through, and I'll show you that too, and make sure that comes through. So that's basically how that's going to work. Oh yes, and there's the one other thing I was just going to mention is about wiring up the motor. So if the receiver sits here on the front, sorry, sideways on that mounting there, so the wires from the motor currently are going to have to run around here and down, around here and down the side, in order to avoid interfering with the control horns from the servos. They can't run across the top. If it runs across the top, then it's going to get in the way. So we don't want to do that. We're going to run it down the side. And even if we do run it down the side, based on the standard out-of-the-box wiring that I got, these wires are not quite long enough so that we could solder them directly into the three holes for the that are here, that are basically the ESC coming out of this little chip, little PCB here. So we can't just wire those three motor wires directly in there, and I'd be a bit nervous about that too, because of the whole idea that, you know, if your motor's running backwards, you have to reverse the wires. That would mean unsoldering anyway, so I don't really want to do that. The good thing is that the receiver comes with a plug, so I'm going to solder this plug on here, and a wire. And so this is the wire here, and this wire is a 3-wire, basically black, red and white. Doesn't actually matter what it is. This is a 3-wire plug that can plug directly into there. And if I can plug that in there, then what I can do, and this is what I'm going to do, I mean, again, I could solder that onto these 1, 2, 3 if I wanted to. What I'm actually going to do is use all of the pieces that I have, and I'm actually going to take this connector here, which is a double-ended socket, and and it's basically built to be, you know, to have this connected into here, right? So that can plug into there and connect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to solder the 3 wires from this connector into there, and that means that I can plug, I'll be able to plug this wire into the receiver, and then if necessary, then I'll attach the receiver to the base, and I can then plug the motor in to here, and if necessary, if it turns out that it's the wrong way around, it'll just be a question of reversing it, turning it over and plugging it in the other way around, and that will switch 2 of the wires. So so that'll work, and also gives the option of at least replacing the motor if it's necessary at a later point, even without, it'd be very easy to unplug that from there, even if we don't want to remove the rest of the components. So there's our plan. Effectively what we're going to do, and I might just lay that out for you here, we are going to solder that component to the receiver like that. We're going to solder the 3 wires there to this connector. We are going to, and the last piece of soldering required is for the battery. So with the battery, what we have is I've gotten this 150 milliamp hour battery here. Almost everything's picked up from, I think, you know what, to be fair, this one came from AliExpress. I think I bought the receiver from Banggood, and well, to be fair, even further fair, the plane itself and the servos and the motor came from Amazon. So I'm spreading the love. So here's our 150 milliamp hour 3.7 volt. It's a 20C 1 cell LiPo battery at the charger somewhere. It comes with this very fine plug here, but it also comes with this wire here, which you know, obviously when you plug in your battery, you want to be able to unplug it. So this plug will go into, if I get it the right way up, if I get it the right way up, yeah, this way around. This plug plugs in here, and then this is the other end of the plug. Now, one of the things you can use the other end of this plug based on this set of batteries, I can put the links to those in the posting. Of course, you know, beware if you're watching this a year later, the listings on those websites expire. Basically, I'm just going to snip. That's for plugging into the battery. The battery charger that this came with uses one of these kind of plugs, and that will that's why I've got this wire here. That's for charging. What I'm going to do is snip this, and then solder the other end of, sorry, the black to positive and the red to negative. Sorry, the black to negative and the red to positive. And I'm going to solder that directly to the board. That gives me a nice long lead that I can use to attach the battery, or to remove this battery and to attach another one. I've got 4 of these that came in the pack. I'm expecting that we might get maybe 10, maybe 15 minutes of flight time out of one battery with this very little plane, but we shall see. And so what will happen with the battery is that actually will be mounted on the underside here with a piece of Velcro. So the Velcro that comes with the kit will go onto this mounting base, and that's where the battery will go, and that will be accessible via the hatch that's on the bottom of the plane. So you'll be able to basically open the hatch, put a battery here on the Velcro, and that should sit along with the servos forward of the current center of gravity, which is far too far to the back. And I'm hoping, we'll have to see how it goes, I'm hoping that with all of this on the front of the plane, we'll have enough weight to bring the center of gravity forward to where it needs to be. Obviously a very, very important part of the plane, and honestly I'm looking for something on the instructions now that tell me where the center of gravity needs to be. Oh, there it is. Okay, the center of gravity is basically 10 to 15 millimeters behind the leading edge of the bottom wing. So center of gravity 10 to 15 millimeters behind the leading edge, not of the top wing, but of the bottom wing. So that probably puts it around about here. And you know, based on what it currently is, without any weight, it's way back at the almost at the trailing edge of that that lower wing. It's at there, about almost where those aileron marks are on the wing. So hopefully with these we get enough weight at the front to bring the center of gravity forward to pretty much behind where those rib marks show through on the plane here, honestly. And if not, then we'll have to see about adding some more weight. And just wanted to mention this with the weight, that's the lead strip that is included on the mounting base that we followed through with the instructions. That's about 50% of the lead that was in the kit. So I've still got more lead available if necessary. Just, well, it won't be as pretty in terms of putting it in, because it's pretty much wrapped as closely as I can get with that existing lead weight. So I'd have to figure out where to put it. Probably, you know, I think what I'd do is stuff some inside this little cavity at the front. Would probably be a good place to put it. So I'm going to do some soldering. Let's get ready for that.